Originally, smoke and mirrors were used by magicians in their performances to create illusions or tricks that amazed and entertained audiences. Metaphorically, the term has come to represent methods used to obscure reality, make something appear more complex or mysterious than it really is, or divert attention away from certain facts or issues. Smoke and mirrors refers to a technique or strategy used to deceive or distract people, often by creating a false or misleading impression. It implies the use of manipulation, illusion, or trickery to obscure the truth or divert attention away from something significant. It describes a situation where appearances are manipulated, truths are concealed, or elaborate distractions are created to prevent people from seeing or understanding the reality of a situation. We were given smoking mirrors, narratives that obscured the rich tapestry of history, concealed the voices of the marginalized, and distorted the realities of the past. These mirrors refracted half-truths, casting distorted reflections that failed to capture the richness and diversity of our collective story. However, we are awakening. We are shedding the veils of misrepresentation. We're learning to discern the truth from the haze, to see beyond the smoke that has clouded our vision. We are delving into the depths of history to uncover the unfiltered, unvarnished truth that has too long been obscured. We are learning the truth, reclaiming the untold stories, amplifying voices that were silenced, and acknowledging the complexities of our shared past. We're acknowledging the histories of indigenous peoples, of marginalized communities, of those whose stories were concealed behind the smokescreen of biased narratives. We recognize that the path to truth is a journey marked by introspection, the willingness to question conventional narratives, and the commitment to amplifying diverse voices. It requires openness, humility, and an unwavering dedication to unveiling the truths that have been obscured by the smoking mirrors of the past. As we embark on this journey, we must remember that learning the truth is a responsibility. A responsibility to honor the past, to acknowledge historical injustices, and to pave the way for a future grounded in truth, justice, and equity. Let us continue this journey with open hearts and minds, committed to learning, understanding and celebrating the multiplicity of truths that make up the rich tapestry of history. Together, we can unveil the reality beyond the smoke and mirrors and build a future rooted in the integrity of truth. I stand before you not as a victim, but as a testament to the strength and resilience of a community that refuses to be defined by the adversities we've faced. We are not victims. We are warriors. We are creators. We are architects of our own destiny. Yes, history has tested us. We faced injustices, obstacles, and struggles that have threatened to overshadow our spirit. But in the face of adversity, we've shown resilience. We've stood tall against the winds of oppression, and we've refused to yield to the weight of despair. Today, I wish to address a topic that has long been shrouded in the mist of misconception and historical inaccuracy: the widely accepted narrative of Thanksgiving. For years, the story of Thanksgiving has been celebrated and taught as a symbol of peace, unity, and collaboration between the Pilgrims and Native Americans. However, the truth reveals a more complex and challenging history that deserves acknowledgement and understanding. The traditional narrative often portrays the first Thanksgiving as a peaceful and harmonious gathering between the Pilgrims and Native Americans, where they shared a bountiful feast and lived in amicable coexistence. While this idealized version serves as a comforting story of unity, it overlooks the tumultuous and tragic realities of that time. The truth is that the relationship between the Pilgrims and Native Americans was characterized by conflict, exploitation, disease and the eventual displacement of indigenous communities from their ancestral lands. The historical context involves a story of colonization, dispossession, and the lasting impact on Native American communities. It's crucial to acknowledge the darker side of this history, the pain and suffering endured by Native Americans, and the damaging consequences of colonial expansion. The idealized portrayal of the first Thanksgiving neglects the long-standing and troubled history of mistreatment, injustice, and displacement faced by Native American communities. As we reflect on this historical event, it's essential to recognize the need for a more comprehensive and accurate understanding of our shared history. Acknowledging the complexities and the real struggles faced by Native American communities during this time is crucial in honoring the truth and learning from our past. We live in an era where information, although abundant, is not always reliable. Misinformation, propaganda, and manipulation are prevalent, often camouflaged as truth. The danger lies not just in the misinformation itself, but in the agendas and interests that it serves. We must remain vigilant and stay clear of their psychological warfare. We must understand what the one is afraid of. They are afraid that we will gather and demand more power than they have given us. They are afraid that people or those who have committed atrocities have names and can't hide behind labels forever. They are afraid that the original people will demand a new beginning. A revolution that has no place for the pillagers and exploiters. We must be the headquarters of this revolution to defend against the cruelty, exploitation, greed, and violence against our people and others around the world. We must defend ourselves and those who do not benefit from 500 years of oppression. We must always remain vigilant and be alert to their insidious attacks on the mind, for they have come before. Let us see how propaganda and
they will come again.
psychological tricks have been perpetuated in our mainstream media, education system, and historical writings. Every year we celebrate our civilization with a holiday known as Columbus Day. 500 years ago, Christopher Columbus sailed off to claim new riches for the Catholic Church. Arriving in 1492, he spoke of the 3 million Taino Indians, who came out to greet them and described them as the friendliest, kindest people of the world. He then enslaved, raped, and killed them at such a rate that by 1555, every single one of them was dead.
Summer was fading fast, and the window for attempting the long and dangerous ocean crossing had already started to close, when on September 6, 1620, an aging 180-ton ship called the Mayflower weighed anchor off Plymouth, off the south coast of England, and set out on her own across the North Atlantic, on what would prove to be one of the most historic voyages of the millennium.
It's worth reminding ourselves that at the time they were a very, very small group of very extreme people. And if we'd never heard of them ever again, nobody would be surprised. And most English people thought that they were well rid of them. The fact that they are in the long term extraordinarily successful, that they've found the world's greatest democracy, throws retrospective lustre. They are, one might say, if you wanted to be critical, they're religious nutters who won't settle for anything except the most literal reading of the Bible. They want to transform a nation state into something that resembles what they take to be a godly kingdom.
They weren't the people that you would expect to be founding a new colony. They weren't soldiers, they were not emissaries of a foreign government, they were not particularly well provided with supplies. At least half of them were separatists, that is to say, radical Protestants, who were religious exiles, who had been living in Leiden, the Dutch Republic. They weren't the people you would automatically expect to be founding a new outpost of the British Empire.
They were in many ways the least likely of task forces for establishing a permanent English presence in the New World. Fewer than 50 of the 102 passengers were adult men, many well past their physical prime. At least 30 were children, and nearly 20 were women, including 3 expectant mothers. By the time they set sail, England had still not succeeded in establishing a truly viable colony on the shores of the New World, and their chances of survival, let alone success, were all but nil.
When you look at Jamestown, Virginia, by 1620, they'd pumped in something like 8,000 colonists there, and yet they were struggling to keep the numbers above 1,000. The death rate was awful, so it was a very dangerous step to even contemplate, especially given the number of people on the Mayflower.
They don't register at all numerically. It's a tiny handful of people, many of whom don't survive. We're thinking about migration to the Americas in the 17th and 18th century. We're talking about 10 million Africans, for instance, as against this tiny handful of Englishmen and women. The fascinating thing then about the Pilgrim story is how this tiny group of people managed to get by and managed to tell the story in such a way as to erase that whole other history.
If you ask people, where does America start? They'll say, it starts in Plymouth Rock. Despite the fact that Jamestown was founded in 1607 and Plymouth was founded in 1620, it became our story of national origin.
Somehow, with the passage of time, the arrival of this frail, unlikely band would come to be seen as the true founding moment of America, and the story of their coming, enshrined as the quintessential myth of American origins. Commemorated each year on the 4th Thursday in November at Thanksgiving, and embodied in a handful of iconic and instantly recognizable images, including a rock and a ship, and a feast that almost certainly never took place as we imagine it did.
I think we feel that we're such a new country that we need to know how it all began. We need that beginning moment, and the Pilgrims serve that purpose. But what people forget is that it wasn't all fated. These were normal people under extraordinary circumstances, and they were making it up as they went along. And it ends up being as much a story of survival as it is a story of origins.
What no one could have imagined in the fall of 1620, as autumn winds blew the 102 passengers of the Mayflower west across the Atlantic, was how harrowing, dark, and deeply unsettling their pilgrimage to the New World would be, or how utterly their quest for a godly republic would transform the world they were sailing towards, the searchers themselves, and the nation that would rise up long after they were gone, consecrated to their memory.
Because the Pilgrims have been so enshrined in the national imagination, because they've meant so much in what we've told ourselves about who we are as Americans, we need to go back and ask questions about why we picked that story, what it was about these people, what it was about their history that we wanted to see reflected in our own national image. There's been a tremendous amount of memory produced around the Pilgrims, but there's also been a lot of forgetting. That memory is very selective. And so to look at what's been remembered and let that shed light on what's been forgotten is an important exercise when we're thinking about something that has been so central to our national imagination.
Such perseverance and faith were the basis of manifest destiny in which the whites wanted Christians to take over their continent. Their God clearly didn't like the 100 million Native Americans who lived in harmony with nature, as 99% of them were systematically murdered. This fact is now celebrated through a campaign called Thanksgiving Day. Only nobody speaks of land theft, genocide, or destruction of culture. Nobody questions the propaganda films depicting Native Americans as vile savages trying to stop God's civilized white settlers from making a home. They are too busy eating and celebrating, unaware that the few Native Americans hold a day of mourning on the very same day. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will continue this story alongside other lies that were told to us. Comment with any questions or if you would like to contribute with any information that may be helpful for me to depict. Thank you.